So there you have it. The interim budget has been presented by the Finance Minister, and it's been quite a statement over the course of 10 years. All the highlights that the Finance Minister has presented, the government has done financially, and what has been the effect. She has recounted those as well, putting across how India has been put, how the economy was in doldrums when the government took over. That's what she maintains. The inflation rate was very high at that time. How India has then gone on year after year, consolidated these gains that have taken place over these last, well, almost 10 years. 9 years is the actual official duration, but it's almost 10 years if you take it up to May. And she has put out some big numbers, really saying in how this period people's average income has increased by 50%. But in terms of the announcements, she's very clearly said that there will be no changes as far as taxes are concerned, direct taxes or in customs as well. Indirect taxes come in the domain of GST, so that is a different ball game altogether. It's outside the ambit of the annual budget or the interim budget, which has been the case this year. But if you look at what's happened in terms of the capex expenses, that's been increased beyond 11 lakh crore rupees. And the biggest signal that the market and a lot of the economists were looking for, fiscal deficit, that's been now kept at 5.1% of the GDP. So that is within that track that has been meant for fiscal consolidation, to bring it down to 4.5% by FY25. So that's what's been done. Also, she announced that 5.8% was the fiscal deficit number, the revised number for the year that is going by, the financial year, and that is an improvement from what had been estimated earlier. Apart from that, if you look at what's been happening, a big fund is being set up to give zero or very low interest loans, 1 lakh crores. It's a 50-year interest-free loan that is for tech-savvy growth. So this can be used by the private sector, even startups, to scale up their R&D and innovation as far as a lot of sunrise sectors, tech-heavy sectors are concerned. A lot of other announcements have been done as well. She's talked about for the agricultural sector, nano DAP. There was nano urea earlier. Now there's going to be nano DAP as well, which will be for all the agroclimatic zones. Let's listen into what the Finance Minister said in terms of presenting the interim budget in the lower house of the Indian Parliament today. She underlined that the Indian economy has witnessed positive transformation in the last 10 years.
The Indian economy has witnessed profound positive transformation in the last 10 years. The people of India are looking ahead to the future with hope and optimism. With the blessings of the people, when our government, under the visionary and dynamic leadership of Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi, assumed office in 2014, the country was facing enormous challenges. With Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas as its mantra, the government overcame those challenges in right earnest.
The Finance Minister also said that the government's development philosophy covered all elements of inclusivity. She added that the country overcame the challenges of once-in-a-century pandemic to lay solid foundation for Amrit Kal.
Development philosophy covered all elements of inclusivity, namely social inclusivity through coverage of all strata of the society, and geographical inclusivity through development of all regions of the country. With the whole of nation approach of Sabka Prayas, the country overcame the challenges of once-in-a-century pandemic, took long strides towards Atmanirbhar Bharat, committed to Panch Pran, and laid solid foundations for the Amrit Kal.
Well, there you have it. That's what the Finance Minister has done. She's presented the interim budget that is for 2024 ahead of the general elections. Let me repeat what are the highlights of this budget. First of all, since it's an interim budget, it was almost made clear by the Finance Minister earlier as well that it's a vote on account and people can't really expect any big announcements. And she's stayed true to form on that. No changes in the tax rates, the direct tax rates, or in customs really. Remember, indirect taxes are in the domain of GST, so no longer in the budget. Let's listen into further as to what the Finance Minister had to say as part of her interim budget speech.
Inclusive development and growth. Our humane and inclusive approach to development is a marked and deliberate departure from the earlier approach of provisioning up to village level. Development programs were thus provisioned. In the last 10 years, however, have targeted each and every household and individual through housing for all, Har Ghar Jal, electricity for all, cooking gas for all, bank accounts and financial services for all in record time.
Let's also listen to what the Finance Minister had to say about empowering women. Remember, women remain part of the 4 focus groups as far as this budget, and budgets in the past have also been concerned. Youth, the poor, women, as well as farmers. Listen into the FM about women.
For Nari Shakti, the empowerment of women through entrepreneurship, ease of living, and dignity for them has gained momentum in these 10 years. 30 crore Mudra Yojana loans have been given to women entrepreneurs. Female enrollment in higher education has gone up by 28% in 10 years. In STEM courses, girls and women constitute 43% of enrollment, one of the highest in the world. All these measures are getting reflected in the increasing participation of women in workforce. Making triple talaq illegal, reservation of 1/3 seats for women in the Lok Sabha and state assemblies, and giving over 70% houses under PM Awas Yojana in rural areas to women.
And let's also listen into what the Finance Minister had to say about the kind of GDP growth rate that the country has seen, particularly over the last 3 years, and what lies in future as well.
Exemplary track record of governance, development, and performance. Besides delivering on high growth in terms of gross domestic product, the government is equally focused on a more comprehensive GDP, that is, governance, development, and performance. Our government has provided transparent, accountable, people-centric, and prompt, trust-based administration with citizen-first and minimum government, maximum governance approach.
All right, let's now bring in our guest. We're joined by Dr. Charan Singh. He's a well-known economist and he's CEO of eGrow. He's with us in our studio. Good afternoon, Dr. Charan Singh. What do you make of the FM speech? It has been true to form in terms of an interim budget, a vote on count, no changes in the tax slabs, but pretty significant things coming through in terms of increased capex spending, as well as doing better than what was expected in terms of the fiscal deficit.
Absolutely. My own feeling is that the government it's an interim budget. So nobody would have expected lots of schemes and announcements in this. It has to provide continuity. The country is doing very well. 4th year, we are doing 7% plus growth. So obviously, when you're doing such a high growth, there has to be sustainability. So you can't take a holiday on policy. So I think I was also expecting, and I've repeatedly said, there will be continuation of policy, and that's exactly what I see in this. The government has focused on youth. They have been doing it for some time now. They've also focused on the poor, they've focused on women, and they've focused on farmers. Very categorically, this has come. But the most important thing that this government is doing, which it did even during COVID's difficult years, was fiscal consolidation. They have continued that path, and I must congratulate them that despite the odds, despite the challenges, the glide path is very clear. The FM had said she'll bring it to 4% of GDP, the GFT,
4.5%.
and she is chasing it. She is now bringing it in this year 5.1 in 24-25, and in the previous year she is closing it with 5.8. That was the revised estimate. So I think the fiscal consolidation path is clear. The market borrowing story which she has narrated, which she says is going to be less than the previous year, that means lots of additional resources will be available to the private sector. Technically speaking, it's crowding in. The government did capital expenditure and encouraged the private sector to come in. Now that the private sector has come in, the government need not borrow so much because they were using the borrowings for capital expenditure. So she's withdrawing from the market borrowing program. So the private sector is obviously going to benefit from it. The other thing which I found...
That capital will be available for the
private sector. So the other thing which I'm very, very happy with them is the thing on tech-savvy youth program, where they're creating an infrastructure or corpus fund of, I think, 1 lakh crore
rupees, yes.
Nil or very low rate of interest.
Yes.
Now, that's exactly what India needs. If you want...
It's a 50-year interest-free loan, tech-savvy growth.
Yes. Now,
it'll be interest-free or very low interest?
Very low interest. Now, I think that's going to encourage lots of startups in the country, especially the tech startups. So this is very much call for the hour because the country has such a rich demographic dividend. And you have so many youth graduating from the IITs which they have set up.
And this could be very opportune for startups because there's a funding slowdown that is right now happening, and a lot of debt funds have also come up. Instead of VCs funding startups, there's a lot of startups have to go for debt as well.
Exactly, exactly. And I have always noticed one thing: if the government steps in, provide the initial material or the initial fuel, then there's ignition and then there is lots of growth in the economy. That's exactly what happened in capital expenditure. They sunk in lots of money, and now you see the private sector has come in. So similarly, in starting this, the tax-heavy, very low or nil interest rate corpus, I think is something very, very good. Now, when a country has to grow, it is obvious innovation and research has to take place. Now, who will do that innovation and research? And that's why when she mentioned how from Lal Bahadur Shastri the terms got coined, and now we are talking of going to focus on research, I think that's very, very positive. So how do I look at the whole budget? On first hand, fiscal consolidation continues. There is no populism. No tax rate changes have been brought in, which shows a steady glide path towards growth, faith on their existing policies, and then the tech-savvy thing, and then the focus on the 4 major areas which are vulnerable, which need support: farmers, women, youth, and the poor.
And the capex increase that has been done, last year it was already a record amount, about 10 lakh crore rupees, and now it's going to be 11.11 lakh crore rupees. That's an 11.1% increase.
Yes.
How significant is that, considering that this, again, was an interim budget?
So please remember that as a percentage of GDP, we economists are used to comparing things as a percentage of GDP. It is 3.5%. It's unprecedented. So therefore, she has brought in a paradigm change. The borrowings are being used for capital expenditure. So therefore, I think the first signaling that has gone, that the government means business, while the tax collections are high, the GST collection has gone up. I think the monthly average is 1.6 lakh
yes,
crore, which is massive.
Crores, yes.
Which is massive. And the tax base has widened. The confidence that it gives into the taxpayer that my money...
She said the number of taxpayers, direct taxpayers, has gone up by 2.4
times. 2.4 times. So
and
that
direct tax has gone up by almost 3 times.
Yes. So what does that...
This is the course of the last 9 years.
Yes. So what is that signaling to the taxpayer? The signaling is very clear that the money is being utilized for productive purposes. You remember for a very long time there was a complaint from the taxpayers: we do not know where our money gets used. But now that is becoming so apparent and so visible where the money is getting used. So therefore, when you talk of capital expenditure at 3.5% of GDP, the first feeling is, okay, I can see the productivity of my tax, and therefore the multiplier effect is showing to everybody, employment in terms of investment. I think that's a very positive signal that they have conveyed through this budget speech.
And already I'm seeing that the renewable energy stocks have jumped because in the interim budget, the FM has proposed to provide assistance to set up rooftop solar systems in 1 crore homes.
Yes, that's a fascinating idea. The Prime Minister has spoken about net zero. We want to reduce the pollution. We can only do it either reducing electricity or the consumption pattern. So combustion engines are very, very polluting. They have spoken about electric vehicles. And the rooftop is harnessing the solar energy, and they're giving lots of incentives and affordable tax.
Just hold that thought for a second, because I'm being asked to go across to my colleague in Mumbai, Shama Mishra, who has the National Stock Exchange's chairperson with her. Go ahead, Shama, take it away.
Gautam, as we were expecting that the budget would be on the expected lines, not expecting any much, no major policy changes, and that is what has happened. This is also one of the shortest budget announcement that we've ever seen. To talk more on this, we have Ashish Chauhan with us. Sir, we did see that no major announcements happened over here, also because this is the election year. What do you see the major takeaways and overall reaction on this year's budget?
Overall, I think it's telling you that the government or the Honorable Finance Minister talked about last 10 years accounts and the achievements rather than last 1 year. But if you look at last 1 year itself, there have been tremendous achievements, and in some ways they got lost in the 10 years achievements related activities. But overall, I think the government has found a winning formula of taking welfare with growth, with fiscal restraints. These are the three words that come to my mind, that they want to have growth, for which they are putting a lot of capex, and the capex has gone up from 10 lakh crore to above 11 lakh crore. It's 28-year high as a percentage of expenditure, and that's a welcome move. And I think infrastructure is what India was kind of waiting for, especially the execution part of, not the layout, but the execution part. That is now I think they have found a winning formula. And at the same time, welfareism is because she said there are 4 groups of people, or 4 castes which need to be taken care. That is farmers, women, poor, and young. And so for me, this is another winning formula, that is welfareism, and of course 80 crore people getting free ration, and Ayushman Bharat being expanded to many other people either. And so for me, in some ways, these are their winning formula that continue the growth momentum, continue the tax buoyancy, and that's where they are trying to bring down the fiscal deficit from 5.8% to now for 24-25 to 5.1%, and then the next year to 4.5%. So overall, I would give 10 out of 10 on just showing what they did over last 10 years, including $600 billion, almost $600 billion of FDI, which was a very, very significant achievement given the COVID times and things like that. But overall, still the focus is on ensuring that India grows, poverty reduction happens, and at the same time, the infrastructure improves.
Sir, you rightly mentioned that, this is a winning formula, where she mentioned about the 4 castes, the new 4 pillars, we could say it. Going towards building a new India, this is definitely essential. And when she has spoken about all these factors and the welfare schemes that has been brought, how do you see major changes happening going ahead? Because COVID times, we've already spoken a lot about it. Now, as the time normalizes, how do we see major changes happening here?
For me, I think the biggest change has been in creating a social security framework over the last 10 years in India. I think if we have to be a developed nation, we must learn to provide for poor and needy for at least their basic sustenance. And somewhere on the line, we had not been able to do that. I think over the last 10 years, slowly we have gone towards the pension scheme, the health benefits through Ayushman Bharat, and insurance schemes, not only for humans, but also farmers and things like that. And then, of course, the education. So somewhere along the line, the food part was missing. And 3 years of implementation of the food program, the free ration program, I think tells me that India, with its per capita very low income, is one of the best countries to provide today the social security framework. And if we continue there, then you will see much larger growth going forward, because any country which is not able to feed its people, is not able to take care of their health, cannot grow. And that's where I think in some ways, as much as infrastructure is important, for me, we have been self-sufficient food production-wise, but we had to still struggle with the hunger. And I think this is, in a way, we have now a framework for literally next 30, 40 years. If we continue to focus on welfare, because many industries, many economists who come from the industry side, we think this is not an important issue for me. For doing business, welfare of every person in this country is absolutely important. That's where I like what is happening, and this is the only way India has to basically get its place in the Committee of Nations.
So you have spoken about 30, 40 years, next 30, 40 years, and India aims to become a developed nation, and we are also moving towards Atmanirbharta. So by the time we become Atmanirbhar completely, my question is a tricky one. What do you expect from the actual budget that will happen now in July?
In 2047, as Honorable Prime Minister has given the vision of becoming a Viksit Bharat, that's what Honorable Finance Minister mentioned many times in her speech. And it is possible to become rich before we become old. See, each society gets old over a period. You have seen Japan getting old probably 20 years back. Europe has become old. China has suddenly become old because of one-child policy, and they have stuck in the middle income zone. Because of the way the technology is progressing, we have a chance over next 23 to 25 years to become rich before we become old. And that's basically the hope of every right-thinking Indian. And it is achievable because we have a young population which is technology savvy. And if we are able to provide the infrastructure and environment for them to go out and service the entire world, whether by way of production of goods, but also providing services. That's where the PLI and other schemes, although it was not mentioned, we have been pretty much the services capital of the world. And there has been huge buoyancy in the services exports, but also in remittances, where now we have gone from low-end Middle East remittances being sort of dominating to now the larger paying jobs actually dominating in the remittances. But overall, for me, the manufacturing is now picking up. It's just building up. And that's where, for me, we are going to pretty much fire on services, which is current mainstay, and then the manufacturing, which is going to pick up now onwards.
So how would you translate this for a layman? How is this for them? Because no changes in the tax regime, overall no major announcements. So how would you translate that?
In a way, it's a relief for most that each budget ends up putting some or other tax burden, but the tax rationalization with GST and also the direct tax framework. In fact, she has also rationalized the direct tax regime by saying that small petty tax disputes with the government are now being taken away up to a particular minimum size and things like that. I think those are the ways to do things rather than trying to keep on tinkering with the taxes on direct or indirect side each year, because that doesn't allow people to plan longer. And so each business would want stability in the tax structure and tax rates. And of course, everyone wants lower taxes, direct or indirect. But overall, if you are able to provide a stable tax concepts and frameworks, that itself is a great relief and to every individual, but also to businesses.
So I'd also ask about stability. You mentioned about stability. Now we expect that there'll be a stability once this election is done, because that is very helpful for other policies that has already been there. Going ahead, what major policy decisions do you see should happen for the, again, Atmanirbharta or for the developed India?
In a way, we are at the right place at the right time. And we have to ensure that we take the maximum advantage of everything that is happening. We have been dependent primarily on import of energy, and our growth will require more energy, but then we are moving towards alternative energy, that is solar rooftop and other things. That has been a major focus of this budget speech also. But overall, energy has been our bugbear. Similarly, we have had issues on electronics, that we have been able, we have to import a lot of electronics. And that's where, again, the new PLI policies allowing more cheap companies to come in, more downstream units to come in. And so for me, that's where now you can see Apple exporting pretty much almost $8–10 billion a month of iPhones. And so you can see the high-tech manufacturing is coming. The PM Gati Shakti and all the corridors, industrial corridors and logistics corridors have now brought down the cost of logistics from double digits, high double digits to now sort of mid or high single digits, which is a great achievement in the last few years. And probably if we continue to improve our infrastructure, we will certainly become a good manufacturing center also in the world.
So taking your two words, new energy and wherein infrastructure. EV is something, everyone is expecting, even the layman is expecting that there should be some major policy announcements on infrastructure, charging and everything. How do you see we work ahead in that direction?
In a way, solar rooftop, she mentioned about even charging the EVs at home and things like that. And so the detailed strategy probably will come out in the main budget as and when it is presented after the election. But overall, the trend is very clear that we need to defocus or remove our focus from importing fossil fuel and be as much Atmanirbhar as possible. And good thing is we have a lot of sun across the year. We are a very fortunate country, and if we can utilize the sun rays, unlike many other countries in the world who don't have that capability over 12 months in a year, we are pretty much there. And that's where I think if our strategy, which is currently happening on solar, if it is successful, we will see incremental lower dependence on imported fossil fuel. And that's where all of us should plan for.
Okay. So Ashish Chauhan has definitely given a 10 on 10 on this budget. Gautam, do you want me to ask any other questions to sir?
Yes, sure. You could ask Mr. Chauhan about the fact that already we are seeing reactions coming in from the market, although they seem to be a little flat if you just look at the benchmark indices. But if you go sectorally, you can make some distinctions. Auto is up, green energy is up, but IT is a little down, pharma is down.
So we'll come to NSE only. We are seeing sectoral, ups and downs. So there's pharma, there's IT. What would you say about how NSE has taken this?
In a way, the expectations of different sectors get built up before the budget, and since no taxes have come in, broadly no new addition other than the capex which has increased. No other major announcements are there. Broadly, the markets are flat. And some of the expectations which were built probably slowly will be sort of calculated by every participant. And that's where you will see minor movements. But I have not seen during the budget speech or after the budget speech any large movement.
Okay. So we were also hoping that, it will smoothly cross the 22,000 mark. Slowly but surely we are doing it. Do you have any time frame in mind?
See, for me, my job is of an umpire and not of a person who transacts. But broadly speaking, if you're directionally correct, we should be okay. Because there are international situations. Currently, US interest rates are under discussion, which is a very large proportion of how things move across the world. And so there are many, many factors which are outside the Indian sort of domain. and they affect our markets also. So that's where giving exit targets to anything is not that important vis-a-vis we being directionally correct and comparable to other economies, how we will grow. And today, I think we have a stage set for if the world is cooling down in some ways, we are still looking literally the largest hope the world has today.
So I'll also ask this question where, the contribution of a common man, the youth, the new time investors, the first time investors is also there in, in giving this major contribution for this number that we are achieving. How would you say that the measures, the government, the policies that has been there for, enhancing, for attracting these new time investors?
In a way, government has given tremendous importance to the markets-based mechanism, from what I call targeted distribution to basically the markets-based mechanism in almost every aspect of life. Stock markets have also benefited out of that, and because of the same, today in last 3.5 years, we have got the number of investors going up from 2 crore to now 8.7 crore investors, which is now the largest cohort of any type in the country in terms of the number of people associated with the markets, right? So in a way, we think as and when India grows further, more and more people will come to invest in the markets. Youngsters are more tech savvy. They are able to do things on mobile. That's where they are participating faster. But I'm sure even middle age and older people will also slowly start coming into the markets.
All right, thank you very much, sir. And Gautam, if you have any other questions, I'll make sir stop here. Wait here, otherwise I'll let him go.
Yeah, please do. Thank you. Thank Mr. Chauhan on our behalf. We'll let him go at this stage because I'm being told to take a break. And remember, the standard advice from most fund managers even now is that if you have a bunch of SIPs that you're doing in mutual funds, one should be in just index funds. Just buy that and keep doing your SIP in that, and because that's where the market is going. It's making higher highs and higher lows as well, so the general trajectory is up. We'll take a quick break at this point and are then continuing coverage about the budget and different reactions that are coming in from experts as well as industry. We will keep getting you that as well. Stay tuned to DD India.
ग्रामीण अर्थव्यवस्था के संरक्षक एग्रीकल्चर इंश्योरेंस कंपनी ऑफ इंडिया
Special housing loan scheme for women. Rate of interest at 8.35%. Zero processing charges, no prepayment charges, takeover of loans at zero cost. Now is the right time to be a woman home buyer.
Voice of a rising aspirational world. Stories of challenges, struggles and accomplishment. A world battling conflict, hunger and poverty. Embracing growth, development, science and technology. A voice of progress, a voice of unity. Watch Voice of the Global South with me, Akshay Dongre, only on DD India.
ग्रामीण अर्थव्यवस्था के संरक्षक एग्रीकल्चर इंश्योरेंस कंपनी ऑफ इंडिया
Welcome back. You're watching DD India, DD India, and we're getting you continuous coverage of what's happened with the interim budget. The finance minister read out her speech in slightly over an hour, and she made some things very clear, as she had said earlier as well, before she presented the budget, that is largely a vote on account. So there was no change in any tax, direct tax rates or any customs duties. Remember, indirect taxes are now in the domain of the GST, not the budget really. So there were no changes there, but she made some very significant announcements otherwise in terms of an increased CAPEX expense that's been projected. It'll be 11.1% higher than it was the last year last year budget, and that was 10 lakh crores. It was a record amount that was kept for capital expenditure. And also the fiscal deficit path, that has also been improved in a way, because the projected figure for last year, that is the ongoing financial year, was 5.9%. Now it's been revised to 5.8%, and for the next year the projection is 5.1%, which is very, very good, because the goal is to get to 4.5% in FY25. We still have Dr. Charan Singh with us of EGRO, CEO EGRO. Dr. Singh, what do you make of the fact that the Finance Minister said our focus will always be on 4 sections of society, which is youth, women, farmers, as well as the underprivileged? Do you think that this budget has stuck where these issues are concerned, these categories are concerned, it's catering well to them?
Yes, I would certainly agree with that, because on different aspects that you mentioned, the 4 sectors, they're focusing on youth. And I was referring to, as we went for the break, that they have come out with a tax-savvy corpus fund, which I think is very, very good. They're also opening opportunities for the underprivileged in terms of tourism centers, and the way she spoke about tourism. So she's taking care of the poor people and of course the government has been providing them free food for now 5 years. It's been assured. As far as the women is concerned, I think this government is doing exceedingly well, and this is, as I was mentioning, followed from the studies which have been done on female labor force participation, that if they join the workforce in a bigger way, we'll be able to add nearly 25% to GDP. That means if we are growing around 7%, we can enhance it to about 9.5%. So on Nari Shakti, I think this government has done tremendously well. The Prime Minister had spoken about 2 crore Lakhpati Didis, and in today's announcement they said they want to enhance that target. And there were very genuine reason for enhancing the target. I thought it was a very transparent argument which the FM made, that through the 83 lakh self-help groups, they're already empowering lots of women, and therefore there are lots of women already empowered under that, and nearly 1 lakh are already Lakhpatis. So they said if they're already Lakhpatis, we'll now enhance the target to 3 crore women as Lakhpati Didis. I think that is really important. If you look at the Prime Minister's other Mudra loans being given to women, 30% of the loans are being given to women, and that is, I think, something very, very positive that is happening there. Even on Prime Minister's Awas Yojana, there also women, single women are being given the houses under the Prime Minister's Awas Yojana. So therefore, women to a great extent are getting empowered there. So I think, and when it comes to the farmers, again, there have been series of schemes which have been announced, but I thought the best one I liked was on the dairy development, which is going to help the farmers in a very big way. We are the largest producing of milk. That's getting strengthened. And most importantly, they've also spoken about public-private partnership in investment for creating warehouses, supply chain in the rural area. That's of course going to enrich the farmers. They also spoke about DAP fertilizers, which is very, very good, and this fertilizer is considered to be better than the other fertilizers. So that way farmers are going to the farmer status income is going to be improved. On oil seeds, I think they are taking a great initiative. And we have seen after the Russia-Ukraine war how oil seeds prices can impact very badly the Indian oil market. So on oil seeds, there's going to be research on high yield varieties, and I think that's something very positive. And dairy development, again, on dairy processing, and the dairy farmers are going to benefit significantly.
In fact, my producers tell me that we have the Finance Minister's soundbite on what she said about farmers in the budget speech as well lined up for you. So let's just listen into what did she say specifically about farmers.
Welfare of Annadata. Farmers are our Annadata. Every year under PM Kisan Samman Yojana, direct financial assistance is provided to 11.8 crore farmers, including marginal and small farmers. Crop insurance is given to 4 crore farmers under PM Fasal Bima Yojana.
And so that was what the Finance Minister had to say about farmers. Let's just also listen to what she said about no changes in the tax slabs.
Under the new tax scheme, There is now no tax liability for taxpayers with income up to 7 lakh rupees, up from 2.2 lakh rupees in the financial year 2013-14.
Let's also listen to what the Finance Minister had to say about taxation.
The threshold for presumptive taxation for retail businesses was increased from 2 crores to 3 crores. Similarly, the threshold for professionals eligible for presumptive taxation was increased from 50 lakh rupees to 75 lakh rupees. Also, corporate tax rate was decreased from 30% to 22% for existing domestic companies and to 15% for certain new manufacturing companies.
So there you have it. These have been changes that were brought in earlier as well, and the Finance Minister conveying that they have brought about a positive impact as well. Dr. Charan Singh is with us. Dr. Charan Singh, what do you make of these changes in terms of, although there were no changes in the tax slabs or any other relief at this point for the general taxpayer, but the Finance Minister making it clear that changes have been brought in through the course of these 9-10 odd years, and they've had a positive impact.
Absolutely. She spoke about the corporate tax. It was 30%, brought down to 22%, and then reduced to 15% in certain specific new. I think that was very important. She also spoke about the presumptive taxes, where she said that earlier we have now brought it to 2 to 3 lakhs. I think that's very important. And for professionals, about 50 to 75 lakhs, the threshold level.
She also talked about waiver of some tax disputes,
yes.
Consolidated 25,000 crore rupees.
Exactly.
That is also very significant.
Very significant.
For a lot of taxpayers.
And then the presumption, the new tax, like till about 7 lakh income, you don't have to pay any tax. So those things have been done.
In the new tax regime.
In the new tax regime. They have widened the tax base. And I am of this belief that if you widen the tax base and if people come to know that your money is being properly utilized, then this widening happens very voluntarily and very happily. On the tax processing, she has also mentioned that earlier it used to take about 93 days. It has been reduced to 10 days. So I think that's also very positive that tax processing is taking place in such a way. Now, on GST, she has very categorically mentioned under a survey that 94% of industry leaders have said that GST is perceived to be very good and that it has helped the supply chain have improved, octroi post, the delay has been reduced. So all that point that she is making, I think, is basically discussing about how the tax regime is becoming friendly and people are reposing confidence in the tax regime. That's why the widening of tax base is taking place. On GST also, she mentioned that the tax base has doubled in GST, while the average amount has gone up to 1.66 lakh crore. That's the average monthly. So on GST also, there is quite a bit of improvement in tax collection. That's why I say that in public finance and public policy, there has been a significant change in the new government. The very fact that they have brought in these changes and those are reflecting in buoyancy and tax collection is a certificate that people have started reposing confidence and are comfortable in contributing to the tax. That, I think, that change in the mindset, I think, is very, very important. That's what I would congratulate the government for in achieving this major change towards the tax regime. Now, of course, one can say that the steps that were initiated earlier by the government in terms of demonetization clearly showed that the government has a resolve, a strong resolve in ensuring high tax collection. And that contributes because once you see that the government is playing such a significant role in compliance and also in the utilization of the tax collection, then it becomes apparent that tax collection is improving, the compliance is there, and there's a fear of the tax authorities. That, I think, is reflecting very well in tax collection.
Okay, let's hope that trend of the increase in tax base and, of course, the increase in tax revenue also sustains the budgetary expenses that have been projected on that presumption alone. Let me now also introduce another guest as far as our mix of the budget coverage is concerned. We have Rajat Kathuria with us. He's a senior economist and dean at Shiv Nalanda University. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Mr. Kathuria, what do you make of, what are your first impressions about the interim budget in terms of, well, there were no major changes for taxpayers and all, but where capex is concerned, fiscal deficit is concerned, this is pretty huge.
Yes, yes. The budget has been along expected lines. As we were talking in the run-up to the budget, that there are unlikely to be major changes in taxes and tax slabs, etc. And I think that's only fair for the government, which is going into elections. And the new government, if at all, will make any changes there. But there is continuation in the trend of the government support to the economy. The government has been supporting the economy through investments in capital, and I think that is reflected in this budget. The government is also trying to sort of rationalize its expenditures and also, gain more revenues, as Mr. Charan Singh was saying. So on both those fronts, what is the resultant output is that we are seeing a consolidation of the fiscal deficit. The target, of course, is 3%, but 5.1% is, I feel, better than expected.
Yes.
And therefore, that's the good news, that if the government is able to achieve...
It was also 5.8% for the financial year that is ongoing right now.
Right.
It was earlier 5.9%.
9%.
And for the next year, it's 5.1.
1%. So that, I think, is a very positive sign. And the other positive sign, as you're saying, is the widening of the tax base, the health in the revenues that the government is getting, not only through GST, but also through the direct tax base. This is positive news for the government. But other than that, my first impressions about when I was hearing the Honorable Finance Minister give the budget speech was that this is something that most people expected, that this is what was going to be there. And there was a lot of focus on what government ought to do, which is, as an economist, one looks at what is the role of the government, and the role of the government is to provide support where the market doesn't provide support. And everything that she mentioned in the first half an hour or 40 minutes in her speech was exactly what an economist would say, well, this is where the market failure is occurring. This is where the private sector is not going. Providing support in rural areas, in urban areas where there is no sort of support for people who have jobs, health support, insurance support, sort of skill formation,
Even for providing where there's a prevailing funding winter, a very long funding winter that's just not getting over.
That's right. So I think this would be a classical sort of role for the government, and I hope this continues to be sustained, which is, let's do things that the private sector is not able to do, and let's provide good, efficient regulation and good, efficient as minimum government, maximum governance kind of support for the private sector.
She talked about GDP as well.
Right, exactly.
In the connotation of governance.
Exactly. And that reflects, I think, to my mind, that reflects what is a renewed focus on what is the quality of growth. Yes, we are the fastest growing economy in the world, major economy in the world, so 7%, and that will continue. But now we also need to focus on the quality of that growth, and the quality of growth means sustainability, it means green, and we've done really well in green in terms of non-fossil fuels, energy production, both wind and solar. It also means a good distribution of that income or the fruits of development, and the finance minister did speak about the fruits of development are now becoming much more pervasive, but they won't become pervasive immediately, and that is why the support for the Antodaya schemes, for the Rural Employment Guarantee Act, for the Deen Dayal Yojana, etc., all that support which the government is giving is sort of parallel or supporting the market to go where the fruits of development aren't obviously going immediately. They will come in the future, but this is what the government is doing. So all in all, I think there were no major surprises. As we had spoken the day before, I think there's been no change in taxes, and I think that's only fair, as I said. And overall, I would say it's a good budget. to present on the
not
eve
resorting to any populist
that's right.
measures, really. But there were two other interesting things as well. One interesting thing, let's talk about that with Dr. Charan Singh. We earlier saw how Niti Aayog came out with the data related to multidimensional poverty, how 250 million people, 248 million people have been lifted out of poverty over the last 9 years. In this speech, she mentioned that the average income of people over the course of these years has gone up by 50%. Again, a very significant figure, do you think?
Yes, absolutely. And I must mention that the Niti Aayog study, which spoke about the multidimensional poverty, which you are referring to, 25 crore people were taken care. Now, please remember, before COVID, what was the fear? Everybody said people in India are going to suffer, fall back into the poverty line, and middle-income people will also come in there, and things are going to become worse. All that India had done in the last 20 years is going to be washed away. And remember, on poverty, we have been focusing for a very long time. We started with the minimum nutrition that is required, and then we kept on working. How much will it convert into daily wage and all that we had done? But the multidimensional poverty study, which came out, clearly showed. And before that, actually, there was a study at the IMF, one with Dr. Bhalla, Surjit Bhalla, who was our ED, had done it, where he showed that the support provided during COVID in terms of free food contributed significantly in containing people falling into the poverty line. Now that below the poverty line. So that study.
But we don't have a defined poverty line.
So we clearly the multidimensional poverty takes various indicators into account now, but that very clearly showed that the government's policies in terms of free food is significantly contributing in supporting demand and supporting income level. One thing which has yet not been quantified, and I've been repeatedly saying, is the health services government provided during COVID. Because for poverty, there are 2-3 reasons.
Because that was free by and large.
That was free. Vaccines were free, people. And even private sector hospitals had been told to take in patients in need for COVID treatment. So to that extent, there was no pressure on the private pocket of people, which is one of the major reasons people slip into poverty, on medical issues. So that part has yet not been quantified. The very fact that the multidimensional poverty says that 25 crore people have been saved in that sense is, I think, very significant and right. The income levels which have gone up, which she mentioned that the average has gone up by 50%, is pretty accurate. And I think now that the threshold level has been done, the important thing is the amount of employment opportunities that are being created now, especially under tourism, which she mentioned, including spiritual tourism again, which she mentioned, I think is going to further lift people out of poverty. There are a series of schemes that she announced on the youth. She recounted them, what happened in the last 10 years. We have set up new IITs, new ITIs, new IIMs, all that she has mentioned. So youth is getting employment in a significant way. The very fact that the youth is getting employment and more employment opportunities are getting created, and especially when I say tourism, because tourism is favorite, minimum investment, maximum multiplier effect. You create a road or you just set up an airport, and then hotel industry, taxis, tourist guides, small restaurants, everybody just comes in. If it is spiritual tourism, still less investment is required. With that, opportunities happen not only for the young youth, also happens for women. So that is why I say the studies that are showing that under multidimensional poverty, which is being referred repeatedly, those estimates look reasonably accurate and are convincing.
All right. Let's just play out for you what the finance minister had to say in her interim budget speech about the fiscal deficit, how it's being further consolidated, and that discipline that had to be given the go-by post-COVID because of the kind of government spending that was required in that period. We're back on track where that is concerned.
The fiscal deficit in 2024-25 is estimated to be 5.1% of GDP, adhering to that path. So the gross and net market borrowings through dated securities during 24-25 are estimated at 14.13 lakh crore rupees and 11.75 lakh crore respectively. Both will be less than that in 23-24. Now that the private investments are happening at scale, the lower borrowings by the central government will facilitate larger availability of credit for the private sector.
And let's also listen to what the Finance Minister had to say about Skill India, the mission that was launched some time back to train the country's youth. And she gave a figure of 14 million that Skill India has achieved in terms of training or upskilling India's youth.
The Skill India mission has trained 1.4 crore youth, upskilled and reskilled 54 lakh youth, and established 3,000 new ITIs.
So 3,000 new ITIs is also a big number. If I could come to you, Mr. Kathuria, on that, it's a large component of how India's youth are being trained for employment, and employment has always been a big issue. The right kind of employment, quality employment in terms of being remunerative, which also has relevance for the future.
Absolutely. I think, just to take a little bit of a background, which is that, demographically, India is one of the youngest countries in the world.
Yes.
And also we have...
Although the FM has also announced a committee to study the impact of population growth and demographic changes.
So it could cut both ways.
Yeah.
A good demography also means that you'll have potential for growth, but it also means you have potential for social tensions if you're not provided with adequate employment opportunities. But I think skilling is absolutely the right way to go for India. We haven't paid much attention to skilling in the past. The ITIs that existed, during the olden times, and only 20 years ago, 25 years ago, were there, but they were not providing any sort of meaningful employment or skill creation. All they were doing were training, electricians and plumbers, and they would find some kind of employment which would be very erratic. But I think a sustained impact through, a focused program on skilling is especially important for India. And I think this is the right way to go. And the reason I think it is especially important for India is because we have a large population that is coming into the labor force. And a lot of them do not have the adequate sort of educational backgrounds, right? I mean, education now, enrollment has gone up and the quality is also improving, but there's still a huge backlog. But there is also a stigma related with apprentice programs, with skilling programs. People got skilled because they didn't have alternatives and they wanted a quick fix in terms of getting employment opportunities. But I think there is no need for that stigma to be there. We need to improve both the credibility of this program as well as how society perceives it. Different countries have skilling programs, have apprentice programs, which people go to and live very good quality lives. Why should this be a second option?
Well,
or lower down in the priority?
Blue-collar work is well paid as well.
Exactly. So the dignity of the work you do. And I think with renewed focus on Skill India and the skilling program, and we'll be able to sort of bypass or overcome the stigma that society has created for itself, I think, because the kind of people who went there didn't have, let's say, adequate educational skills or certificates or background, and most of the people who went there. Now it's becoming different. Skilling is actually for the market. These are the skills that are needed in the market, and we are skilling for contemporary skills, not because sometimes you did surveys of ITI, and I remember I did surveys of ITIs when I was teaching in a management school. And what happened when the teachers in the ITI only had particular kinds of skills that they could impart, and if they didn't get a job, the students became teachers because there were not adequate jobs that are available. And that was not a very healthy thing that was happening.
Well, now the situation is quite dramatically different because now we're talking about the AI challenge.
Exactly.
It's being said that 40% jobs might be impacted. But isn't AI a double-edged sword? If it impacts jobs, it can also create jobs. I mean,
course.
We'll need so many cybersecurity persons in the first place.
Of course.
And then if we have a regulatory setup in place, we'll need regulators.
Absolutely. So the composition of the jobs will change. The technical requirements of the jobs will change, and therefore we need to. So studies that we are doing in the university now, even as we speak, there is a study that I am doing along with a colleague, which just reinforces your point, which is saying that if you look at the employment in India in all the three sectors, agriculture, manufacturing industry, and services, one of the things that you see in a secular way from 2010 to 2024 is that the average skill requirement of the job has gone up, or the actual, not the requirement, let me rephrase that, the skill content or the education background of the person has shown an increase, which means you may be doing the same job that you were doing in 2010.
But you need to be better educated.
But you are better educated now,
Quality
which is what the data
Wonderful.
is telling us,
Wonderful.
that the skill content of all jobs has shown a secular increase from 2010 to today.
Yes, wonderful. We'll be talking about this further as well, but at the moment, I'd like to thank Dr. Singh as well as you, because I have to close for the moment, but this continuing coverage will go on with my colleague Anil in just a bit. Stay with us. Continuous coverage of the interim budget presented by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman right here on DD India. Thanks for watching for the moment.